Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be covering some things that need to happen in Season 3 of Prime Video's The Wheel of Time. Now, this is going to exclude some of the more obvious plot beats that I believe will happen, like Rand going to the Waste, the Battle of the Two Rivers stuff, Elida being her most glorious, messy self, and stuff like that. I'll be focusing on moments and concepts that fly a little more under the radar, and I'll be working in some theories too. But if you enjoy these types of videos, show it some love by giving this one a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm slowly creeping up on 5,000 subs, so to everyone out there who watches and subscribes, thank you so much. So let's get into it. So many of the Wheel of Time characters have big reveals and lots of growth, so there needs to be subtle moments that get them primed for events later down the road. And the first one I want to focus on is Mazrim Taim. Not just because of the massive role he plays in the story, but also because of his connection to the Black Tower and Rand's progression as not just a leader, but as a leader in charge of a military. In Season 2, we had our first mention of Mazrim Taim, and it does feel like this was very intentional. But the first thing I want to point out is that if showrunner Rafe Judkins gets his 8 seasons to adapt the story, Season 4 seems like it will fit the timeline for the Battle of Dumai's Wells. So looking ahead to that moment, it's really imperative that some of the key features of that storyline emerge soon. Mazrim Taim is introduced in Lord of Chaos as a false dragon, and he is a man who can channel the One Power, was captured by Aes Sedai, but later escapes and becomes the leader of the Black Tower. But Taim isn't just important because he's the leader of the Black Tower, but because he serves as an ally to Rand, to later having conflict with Rand as he asserts authority over the Ashaman, some pretty huge betrayals, a fierce rivalry with the White Tower, big reveals in terms of where his true allegiance lies, and his final confrontation in the last battle against Egwene. It's a lot. His character touches on a lot of big stuff, so I think it would be a really good idea to set up his arrival in the final moments of Season 3, much like how the Seanchan are introduced in the last scenes of Season 1 and Moghedien in Season 2. But there is also a concept that goes along with him and the Ashaman that I think needs to be expressed via Rand, and sooner rather than later. So far in the TV show, Rand has had some pretty big setbacks and emotional turmoil to grapple with, but he struggles with putting anyone else he cares about in danger. He very much takes the path of carrying his burdens alone, and the formation of the Black Tower is a very large change to make for our sensitive shepherd, because the Ashaman are not only channelers, but a trained army. Many start out learning weaves as older men, unlike the Aes Sedai, but the training itself is ruthless, bordering on reckless. The amount of Ashaman who burn out or die due to their training is something like 1 to 3. They are encouraged to experiment with the One Power, which is incredibly dangerous. They are seen and used as weapons. And I think all of this can be reflected via Rand's mental state, going through hardships and deciding he needs to be rock hard and not just a leader, but that the last battle is approaching and leaders have to make decisions that will result in the death of the men who fight for him. The Black Tower is also intended as a haven for men who can channel, giving them purpose as opposed to just waiting to go mad or hiding from the Red Aja. So to summarize, Rand needs to become interested in the concept of giving these men a purpose. He needs to come to terms with putting these men in danger, and I think all this can happen by one, enduring more extreme hardships, but also more exposure to male channelers like Taim. Where Logain is a broken man, Taim is ambitious, charismatic, and cunning. His influence on Rand is going to be critical as the story moves forward. And I think it fits the timeline nicely. Moving forward, the next concept that really needs to come through next season has to do with Nynaeve and the way she tests the boundaries of her block. So far in the show, we ended last season with her absolute failure to grab hold of Saidar, causing her to fail to heal Elaine from being shot with an arrow, heal Rand from the wound of the Shadar Logoth dagger, or protect anyone in Falm. She has only channeled when pushed to anger via Leandrin, but so far, Nynaeve hasn't tried to intentionally weaponize her anger as a way to get around her block. Now, the show could go the route of her only channeling sporadically when she is pushed to anger, but I think this would be a mistake because Nynaeve holding on to her anger intentionally and then surrendering to Saidar is one of the crowning moments of her character's arc. She clings to her anger out of dedication to protecting the ones she loves. If she cannot manipulate her anger to make it work for her, she cannot do the one thing she cherishes more than anything, and that's healing those who need healing and fiercely protecting the ones that she loves. It's such a heartbreaking scenario because it's very obvious that holding on to that anger is causing her internal anguish, but it's the most effective means she has to actually hold on to the one power. And she has some pretty epic moments that will happen in season 3 in terms of going head to head with one of the Forsaken. I'd like to see this as a major theme for Nynaeve next season because it sets her on her path for grappling with it and overcoming it. For any fan of Nynaeve, this might be one of the most satisfying moments in the story. So it's imperative to start showing her internalize this method, grapple with it, weaponize it, and the emotional effects it has on her so that when she overcomes it, the payoff is really, really big. While she and Elaine set out in Tanchico, I think this could be one of the B plots that is constantly being explored during their travels. I'm also really looking forward to their interactions together because, as emotional as things get for Nynaeve, she will always have Elaine by her side, pushing her to stay focused and encouraging her when she needs it. Lastly, this storyline for Nynaeve isn't something that can be explored and wrapped up in one season, opposed to something like Egwene's capture and escape from the Shanchen. I think for it to really have the weight it deserves, it needs to be looming in the background for at least a couple seasons. But season 3 feels like the perfect time for her to start testing the boundaries of her block and intentionally manipulating her anger as a way to channel. The next concept that feels really important is the connection between Rand and his love interests. With Rand headed off to the Aiel Waste next season, there is plenty of time for him to interact with Aviendha, so I'd like to focus on the two other characters of Elaine Trakand and Min Farshaw. Let's start with Elaine. In the books, Rand has already interacted with the character. He meets her in the Eye of the World during his time in Caemlyn, but it's not until the Shadow Rising that the two start to develop feelings for one another, and things are left up in the air when Elaine travels with Nynaeve to Tanchico. and Rand leaves for the Aiel Waste. Based on this information, I think it's very possible that the beginning of Season 3 will possibly take place with a bit of a time jump leading up to everyone going their separate ways. I think the most likely way to show this without spending too much time on it is to have the time skip and establish that the two characters have been spending lots of time with one another. I could imagine conversations between the two about how they grew up. Elaine could share more information about her family and brothers with Rand, which would be a perfect scene to cut to Caemlyn and have a scene taking place within the royal palace of Andor. Because as important as Elaine is, her mother, the Lion Throne, and Galad and Gawain all have a huge impact on this story. Another big aspect of Elaine's story is how it affects Aviendha as well. Because if Elaine and Rand haven't already established how they feel about one another, then there's no real reason for Aviendha to have any ambivalence about her feelings about Rand. When you put all of this into perspective, it seems like the only real place to stick this part of the story is in the very beginning of Season 3. The only real big question I have about it is where it will take place. It is possible we could see Season 3 start out in Falm, but that set was filmed in Morocco, so if they decide to use that story location, it would have to be shot in a set that mimics what we saw in Season 2. An interior of the castle would be the most convenient, so production doesn't have to remake the outdoor look of Falm. But another possibility would be that everyone is on the road together, leading up to a location where they all go their separate ways. To me, this is the most tricky aspect. It seems very likely the two characters spend time together, but the big question is where. If you have any theories or observations, drop them in the comments section. The next love interest that needs to establish some type of relationship with Rand is Min. And before I go any further, I just want to make it clear that I firmly believe that this relationship will happen. It seems highly unlikely that Rafe would set the relationship aside or change it to something like a friendship. That said, Min is one of the characters who is the furthest off course with her book counterpart. If we look to the books, Min met Rand in Valon, much like how she met him in the show at Faldara. And at the end of the Great Hunt, it becomes obvious to the reader that she starts to care deeply about him, as she is interrupted by Lanfear, who then warns her that Rand belongs to her. But in the show, the last time we see Min is in Cairhien, where she comes clean to Mat about her involvement with the Shamael. Unfortunately for me and all the other viewers, and most likely the writer's room as well, it seems almost impossible to get Min back on track with her book character without hand-waving a lot of what takes place in the show. One option is for her to eventually cross paths with him later down the road after the events in the Aiel Waste. So we could potentially stick her just about anywhere, but the key would be making sure she somehow is involved in the plots that are already taking place. So bringing her back to the White Tower is always an option. Since she was last seen in Cairhien, which is also the last place we saw Siuan Sanche, it seems like this could be the most likely. But the problem here is that in the books, Min doesn't meet back up with Rand until the Saidar emissary is sent to Caemlyn, where Rand has set up residency in the palace, and they have a reunion and spend time together before all hell breaks loose and they are both captured, leading up to Dumai's wells. In the show, if they don't cross paths in season 3, it would be kind of an icky way to solidify the relationship if it's basically done via trauma bonding over their time being tortured together. The other option is that we see some type of merging with the beginning of The Dragon Reborn, where a majority of characters are camped out together. Moraine is working out where to go next, Rand is getting impatient, and instead of him running away, they decide to set out for the Aiel Waste, and for some odd reason, Min is there. One way this could work is knowing she was in cahoots with the Shamael in season 2. Perhaps Lanfear somehow ties some strings to her and moves her somewhere close to Rand to use her as a spy. Like I said earlier, getting her to fit into season 3 in a way that makes sense might get a little hand wavy. But again, if anyone has ideas, I'd love to hear them. As confused I am over her potential storyline, I really don't think there is any reason to believe she won't be in a relationship with Rand. Otherwise, there's no real reason to include her in this story. It would be way easier to leave her out and focus on other main characters. I'm sticking with my gut on this one. The last thing that I believe really needs to be set up in season 3 is revolving around Morgase Trakand, the Queen of Andor. Now, this is one I feel really strongly about because there is a somewhat vocal crowd that doesn't like her story and feel like it would be better to just have her killed at some point. I think that is blasphemy, and I love the character. But there are a lot of reasons why I think her fleeing the castle is so important. I think we will absolutely get some semblance of Ravine in the story. It's just possible he doesn't go by the same name, but there needs to be a reason why Morgase flees Andor. And this would be the easiest way to do it. The big cliffhanger of season 2 is that the Forsaken are loose. Her storyline opens the door for Elaine to become the queen when she is assumed to be dead. If they were to kill her off by some freak accident, like she falls off a horse, Elaine would simply pick up and go home to be queen. Otherwise, it kicks off a battle for the throne amongst other potential successors. She wouldn't have a choice. Things work much better if we keep parts of the Ravine story around. That way Rand can come back to Caemlyn and hold the throne for Elaine. One way this could be done is if we merge Ravine and Samael and move Samael's actions in Cairhien to Caemlyn. Morgase overcomes the compulsion, flees for her life, and instead of the second battle of Cairhien, we move things to Caemlyn, killing two birds with one stone. This would combine two big plots of the Shadow Rising with the Fires of Heaven, and to keep away from the redundancy of Rand fighting 3 male Forsaken as a climax in seasons 2, 3, and 4. It would also allow things to progress fast enough to get to Dumai's Wells in season 4. I think this would be the easiest way to adapt Morgase's storyline while making it relevant. It also allows for us to spend some time in the palace, and once Elaida is called back to the tower, it would be easy for one of the Forsaken to start pulling the strings. Watt series reported that actress Olivia Williams will be playing the role of Queen Morgase, and I think this is a similar situation to how Lindsay Duncan was cast for Anver Damodred. When you have a character of this much talent you use them and make their time on screen worthwhile. To me, this points to the writers knowing the importance of Morgase and wanting to use the character. I can't see Williams taking the role for a cameo with a lackluster ending. Even if she doesn't end up going undercover and having a prolonged story like the books, her supposed death links Rand to Galad and Gawain by way of rumors. It also allows Perrin to get the White Cloaks to fight for the side of the dragon in the last battle, and it shows the type of woman that Elaine will become and looks up to: brave, fearsome, and dutiful. With Tom coming back in season 3, I'm really excited to get to see and hear about the many sides of Morgase Trakand. This feels like a good spot to wrap things up for today. If you have any concepts or things you think is imperative to see for season 3, drop them into the comment section. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and consider joining the Road to Tar Valon Discord server. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next time.